side. What is up, party people? I am Rob the Movie Guy, and I got my buddy from another muddy, Mr.
Daven Estacado here.
I tripped on my intro there a little bit, but we are here with another video with NRW, our third review in the series of the Rambo flicks, Rambo 3. Oh, is it Rambo Part 3? Rambo First Blood Part 3? It depends on the country, I guess, where you are, because a lot of times when I was looking up the titles, it changes from one country to another, so it can vary. But in this case here, Rambo 3. So we're going to be doing a review in this series here. This is the third week of our review here for the series. And then next week we got technically the final review of the current series here until we lead into September 20th, which is the release of Rambo Last Blood, the last one supposedly of the series here. But before we start our review, let us roll the trailer real quick.
Hit it.
This mission's important, John. I want you to come with me to help me lead the team. What do you say, John?
I put in my time.
What's that mean?
It means my war's over.
He never draws first blood. He only fights back. The first time was for himself. The second time was for his country. This time,
Rambo, something went wrong.
it's for his friend.
Trotman was a good man, and I'm really very sorry.
You're just leaving him?
What do you expect us to do? Send in a Delta team? Create an international incident?
What about me?
By the way you look, I can see you have no experience in war, do you?
Fired a few shots.
That if you're captured, we'll deny any participation or even knowledge of your existence.
Sounds familiar.
Who is this John Rambo? You'll find out.
I know he's your friend. But you cannot do this. You both will die. For what?
Because you do it for me.
What do you think this man is?
God! Oh, God, would have mercy. He won't.
Who are you?
The worst nightmare.
Stallone. Rambo 3.
I'm sorry I got you into this, John.
No, you're not.
All right. So why don't you go start off with your thoughts on the film here, because I have a lot to say about this movie.
So do I. I don't even know where to get. First off, kind of sad we're not going to keep doing this after the next one. But hopefully we're working on a top 10 favorite
Sly film. Yep.
Sly films? All right, I thought it was top 10 favorite Sly films or top 10 favorite Sly Stallone moments.
No, I'm gonna go with, in this case, let's go with the Sly films, because moments, that's a lot harder for me to kind of fine tune, because I have to go through his library of stuff to really pick out certain moments. There are moments I love more than others, but then I go back and we watch films like these, for example, and I'm like, you know what, I really love that sweet sequence there, and but we'll get into that too when we talk about the film here. But yeah, we'll be doing a top 10 Sly flick favorites that we have here, so we'll get into that down the line with that here. But let's get back to our film here.
All right.
Rambo 3. Okay, so you mentioned that you had a lot to say about the film.
This movie's kind of all over the place. One thing I did like about it was more scenes with Troutman. You kind of see more interaction between him and Rambo.
Yeah.
Before we do that, let's go into the synopsis a little bit here, because after the end of the last flick, Rambo's kind of like just walked off trying to go do his own thing. Kind of goes into like isolation in Thailand. So after a while, he starts, living his life out there, kind of doing side jobs here and there.
Oh, he's helping the monastery, I believe. Helping out the monks, I believe.
In Bangkok, yeah.
Yeah.
But Troutman actually finds him kind of doing stick fighting. It's kind of like somewhat of the opening sequence was kind of cool to see. And he approaches Rambo for yet another mission.
Yeah.
And he's telling him, hey, I have another mission going on. This time it's in Afghanistan. Lots of stuff is going down. Innocent people are getting hurt. It's because of trades between Russians and these people.
Yeah.
And small town is getting kind of much. They're short end of the stick of the situation.
Yeah.
I'm personally going in there to kind of take care of the situation. I want you to come with me.
Yeah.
And Rambo turns it down.
Yep. And understandably so, too, because, at this point of his life, he's helping out a group of peaceful people, if you will. They're out to do good in the world, and he's going out fighting, collecting the money to turn into the monastery to help them out with their cause and whatnot. So, his position in wanting to help a good cause has changed from going to war and helping out, his countrymen or his country really to better their situation in these in their fight for whatever the position is in this in those cases there. But in here, he's just helping out simple people for a simple cause, and he's doing the one thing he's really good at, which is fighting, earning money from that, helping them out in return, and then helping them build their temple and whatnot. So, I can see why his position in there would be like, nope, I'm not. I want no part of it. Best of luck to you. And then Troutman goes out on his way to go on with the mission, then eventually gets caught. And then whoever it was that was with him in the film, I forgot the actor's name, but he played the dad in That 70s Show, and I think he was also in, if I'm not mistaken, wasn't he in Rambo 1 or 2? I think the actor that played that liaison between Troutman and Rambo. But at any rate, he comes back to tell Rambo, hey, Troutman has been caught. I thought you'd want to know. And then eventually he ends up going over to Afghanistan to save Troutman. So his heart is in the right place to want to help his only friend in the world, really, because Troutman was the only one that's ever stood up for Rambo in the most dire situations. So of course, no doubt in your mind, is he going to go back to help save his friend? And that's where the film for me kind of shifts into like high gear at that point, where we talked about the action in Rambo 2, where it was just like nothing but nonstop craziness, where over-the-top explosions and the fight sequences are just unrealistic but fun to a point. This film kind of take a step back with the over-the-top action, even though it's still very much in the film, but it's a little more realistic in certain approaches here. I'm going to say though that with this film, I thought that the backdrop in Afghanistan almost drained the film for me, because whereas you have the first film where you have the woods backdrop and you have the small town feel to it, and he's just bringing the war to the town, and then in the second film you have the jungle backdrop in Vietnam, right? I think is where it was in the second film. The color tone in this film just completely almost drained the film for me.
It's more of it takes place in the desert, like after he finds out, he goes into the city how he can get into the city. That's when he meets some rebels and the leaders of the rebels in that area. And after winning a game of goat polo, he ends up winning their trust. And able to kind of like, all right, we'll help you out. And with the help of I forgot the two characters.
Two Afghani characters in the film.
Yeah.
The little boy and I know who you're talking about.
Started on the kid.
I'm trying to see if I can pull their names up here for you, but yeah, I know who you're talking about here. So they're pretty much like guiding him into the base where Troutman is held captive, and because they know the setup there, he's able to kind of guide Rambo to that point, and then Rambo's like, "Leave me alone. I got it from here." And clearly, he's this is where you see Rambo become more of a whereas in the second film he got hurt, but it was almost as if though he was steel proof. I mean, he was like I meant to say he was like bulletproof at that point, where anything was being shot at him, he was never getting hit. In this film, you kind of see a little bit more of the realistic tone where he got shot. And remember that one scene, I put like the gunpowder through the hole to kind of just like incinerate any infection that's in there, and he's like, and you can see the flame just blow in both ways in that little part of the abdomen there. But that part of the film I appreciated more because it made the character more realistic. He was in pain. He was in a lot of hurt in that situation. And then you kind of see the side effects from him needing more help. Where you've got his guide, if you will, and the little kid that comes and help him out. Essentially, that kind of, it was pretty much like I would say like not a buddy film, because Troutman in the film is more of a, he's definitely more hands-on in this film, where he's shooting with Rambo alongside him, and he's also helping him, go through the motion of escaping from the base there. It's almost like a completely different film from what we saw in part 2, and it kind of goes back into part 1, where Troutman is coming to help Rambo escape or help him out of the situation. In this case, Rambo is returning the favor in this film, and it's kind of a nice way to close out the trilogy, if you will.
In a way.
Yeah, so I thought that in that aspect, I liked the film a lot when it came to the different approach of Rambo's purpose in this film here. So I mean, did you get any other positives from this film too?
Yeah, the villain, the main villain, actually was more involved in the story, whereas in the last film, yeah, he was just kind of there as a presence, but he didn't really like show off his villainy. And I guess in a way, this Russian officer actually manages to kind of like be a pretty good antagonist and actually show off how how like he was trying to get the information out of Troutman and kind of torture him and all that, and
yeah,
kind of like he was actually like a threat of a presence, even up to the end where the crazy tank versus helicopter fight was kind of taking place. Like they always go back to a helicopter fight, but like even then you kind of like were like rooting for him to kind of finish him off. you know?
Yeah, I can see that. I don't share that feeling with the villain being better this time around. I mean, I think I can see your point that he's definitely more of a threat in this film, because he's trying to force between what Rambo went through in the second film and what Troutman's going in this film here. Clearly, Troutman's the weaker man of the two, and I can see where you're going with this here. But I don't know. I didn't feel any real threat, because having seen the film so many times, we already know what's going to happen. But I don't know. I thought that was the weakest part of the film, quite frankly, when it came to the villain. Just because of the biggest hurdles that Rambo had gone through was having to go through the men that are at the base, all of them shooting at him, and they're all in different positions. He had to come maneuver himself through all of that. I thought that was his biggest challenge in the film. Whereas the villain itself,
actually a really enjoyable sequence, kind of like him kind of setting the traps, sneaking in, sneaking out, going back in, and then they try to go everything according to plan. And for me, the weakest point for the film was the kid, because Rambo was like, he was telling him like, don't, blah blah blah, and just the kid wouldn't listen. If it weren't for the kid in that one scene, where the shot goes off, he would have gotten caught, and he would have gotten wounded, But there was still kind of cool to see like Troutman kind of come in and save the day. So it was kind of cool to kind of see them interact with each other, work with each other up to the up to the ending point, and then to kind of see like the cavalry come in was actually that's a pretty cool scene as well.
Yeah,
for like the big fight.
Yeah, I thought the one thing I noticed in this film that was a big obvious thing for me was Stallone in his fitness. You can see that he's gotten a lot bigger in this role than he was previously in Rambo 2. And I read an article one time where he was stating that someone had asked him, what was the most fittest you've ever been in a movie? And he said Rambo 3. That was the fittest and the best shape I've ever been in my life. And it shows in this film too, especially in that opening sequence that you were talking about where you were stick biting that guy. Yeah. You can clearly see the muscle mass on him, and you can just see like every cut that's visible in as far as the muscle tone is concerned, and you can see that. But that's where I think where that imagery of Rambo coming from 2 and now moving to 3 was just the action was more or less kind of like it's what I'm trying to say is that I think Stallone in this film has one of his best performances, because not only because he put in the work for the physicality of the character, but he also shows a different side of Rambo 2 where he doesn't want to have other people involved in this mission. He's out solely to help his friend out, and he just needs people up to a certain point because he knows what the consequences are going to be. And that's a side of Rambo that I thought was very that I appreciate seeing in this film. Whereas the other two films, in the first film, he's kind of want to be left alone. He just wants to eat. Second film, he's in a situation where he needs the help, and then he's getting close to somebody, and then he sees the consequences of him getting close to them. They die. In this film, to avoid all that, he has communication with a lot of the locals there, but he tries to keep them at bay to prevent them from getting any danger by being near him. But then again, of course, they've made it very well known that in Afghanistan they're constantly at war. So being attacked is nothing new to them, and you see that in the film too. And he understands that. Listen, this is not the place for me to be in. I'm just here for one purpose, and you don't want to be around me for that. So you've got your own problems. Let me deal with my own problems. So that aspect of Rambo, I appreciated it, and I thought that was a wonderful aspect of the character. And like I said, the physicality he brought with this role too certainly helped out a great deal with him having to go through all the actions that was required for the film. I mean, did you get anything else out of that too?
Oh, I mean, pretty much take the words out of it. Yeah, it was kind of see the character growth that's in the movies, and then kind of see like how he's kind of being a loner and helping out, but he also didn't want anybody involved in his own personal mission. Which is, and the kid got injured because of it. So,
we got the leg, right?
Yeah.
So
that he felt that was on him. So it was kind of neat to see that contrast. And then at the end, kind of everything kind of like in a big explosion at the end when it did. And that was kind of like one of the funner parts of the movie. It was kind of like just the climax there between the tank and helicopter fight. And like seeing all the rebels come in at the last second. It's kind of cool.
At that time, that Rambo 3 was at that time the most expensive film ever made, and it was made. I believe it came out 88. I think it was.
89,
yeah. So at that time, I think it was like a $68 million budget, and somewhere in between that range there. And it had the world record at that time of being the most expensive film ever made. Then it literally, I think a year later, Back to the Future Part 2 came out, if I'm not mistaken. Part 2 or 3. Part 2 came out in 88, right? Or 89. Do you remember? Somewhere around there, because I know that Back to the Future Part 1 came out like in the mid-80s.
Yeah, because we were talking about it during our Stranger Things review. Yeah, it was like 88. We were talking about it in our Stranger Things review.
Right. Okay, so part 1 came out in 85, so part 2 came out like in 88, 89. So, and it wasn't Back to the Future Part 2 had come out, but that took over as the most expensive film ever made. So there was a period that this film was like really expecting to make a lot of money just based off the success of the last film, and ended up making, I think worldwide, like just under $200 million. So it wasn't, you can clearly see that the attraction for the character at that time was nowhere near in its popularity where it was in Part 2 or even Part 1 for that matter. So, I mean, when you watch the film now, do you think like the quality of like the story for the character, the action scenes, do you think it kind of just died down, or did it kind of decrease a little bit too? Because you've seen Part 1, seeing Part 2, and having watched Part 3, I mean, do you notice a difference in quality of action now with each of these films, especially with this one here?
Well, like. Not really the quality, but it's kind of like, all right, they had to do something new. All right, so we did it in a town, we did it in a jungle. Where are we going to go next? The desert. All right, so how are we going to make it look cool? All right, let's have a tank fight. Let's have something associated with that area, and they picked the right location, and it worked. It's yes, you're right. The color tones are kind of different, but that's because you're in a different location. Right. But for a Rambo film, it worked. For him, it worked because he kind of took to it. Did it take away from the action? Not really. It kind of gave him something else to do. Like, the whole sequence of sneaking onto the base and trying to get out in there and kind of booby trap the place in a sense. It was kind of really well done.
Yeah.
And, considering for at the time it was going to be like the final film, it's not a bad film. It's not. Kind of a nice way to end it because it kind of tied ends with him and Troutman now doing a mission together, ending the mission, and then Rambo kind of here returning the favor for Troutman and saving him this time.
Yeah.
So it was kind of a nice way to end that franchise for what it was at that time.
Yeah.
Because nobody else saw these other movies coming. So as they're ending the franchise, it was kind of a fitting way to end it, without them knowing that there would be 2 more films coming out.
Yeah. Yeah, I can see that too. You bring up a really good point. So I mean so if you were to compare when you compare this film and watching it, I mean, do you still think that it holds up well upon reviewing it now? Like, when you look at the film, do you think certain aspects of the film like holds up really well in terms of the action, the storytelling, the acting, if you will?
The acting, yeah. Like I said, rewatching it, there's little things that you pick out.
Yeah.
Some of the scene transitions, again, like we're like kind of, after watching the second one, it's like, oh, I wonder what's funny stuff I'm going to see here. You know, especially with some of the action sequences later on. The kid, I was going to go back to him. Like, he didn't really take me out of the film, but it's kind of like, at the time as a kid, I was like, it put me in the film because, I could be with Rambo. I could help Rambo. Now I was like, nah, that kid should have been there.
Yeah, I felt like you slowed the film down a little bit too.
Yeah, it did. Yeah. But I like the sequence in between it because it kind of gave that spacing between, like, okay, we know what happened in the first part. We know there's going to be bigger action sequence coming. That whole, like I said, that goat polo scene where, like, he's with the leaders of all the other rebel groups was kind of cool to see his interaction with everyone else there as he was trying to kind of like, how am I going to gain their trust?
Yeah.
That was a kind of neat sequence. And even at the end when they all, when the kind of movie kind of wraps up, you see Troutman and Rambo walk away from the wreckage. It was kind of like, all right, that's a cool way to send it off,
Yeah,
like,
that's a fitting ending. I agree. Yeah, it's a very fitting ending. So I mean, like, so this is actually Richard Crenna, the actor that plays Sam Troutman, Colonel Sam Troutman in the film. This is his last portrayal of the character, if you don't include his cameo in Hot Shot Part 2, where he plays a very similar character in Colonel Troutman. When you watch, I mean, he passed away back in 2003. When I saw this film, a part of me was like nostalgic for him. I really wish he would have been around for. I mean, obviously, he would have been well into his well beyond 100 years old at this point. But it would have been nice to have seen him, if he was still alive, to be in these films now. Like, there's a part of me that wishes that he could have seen where this franchise had gone to the lengths that where it's at right now. Because who would have known? We talked about it before in the other reviews that we would have gotten a Rambo 4, let alone even a Rambo 5 in 2019. Where Stallone is well into his 70s now, and you've got a wonderful character who is a mainstay in the franchise, but obviously they're forced to move on without him because the actor is dead for obvious reasons. You can't rewrite him and add him with another actor there. Do you ever, when you watch his performance, do you gain a new appreciation for the character or for the actor portraying this character here?
Yeah, because like he personified the character. He made that character. And for me, like watching these films, I get some of the inspirations of some of the other stuff that I'm into, like the Metal Gear Solid franchise. You can clearly see in other franchises. You can see from old like NES. You can see the Contra. You can where the inspiration for Contra came from. The inspiration for Metal Gear. The inspiration for a couple of first-person shooters and other side scrollers came from this franchise alone, and other franchises at the time. But as I was watching these films, I kind of like, okay, now I know where I could see maybe where Hideo Kojima and some other artists may have gotten their ideas for when they came up with these games, especially with this film and with Troutman. For me, Troutman is kind of like he reminds me of someone. He reminds me of the Colonel from Metal Gear Solid that you speak with over the codec, and then like some of the sequences, like in this film, like I mentioned to you earlier, was kind of very like the latest Metal Gear. Before Kojima left, was where like you're in that desert area. It's very reminiscent of this movie where you're sneaking onto a base and and setting traps and trying to get through to get hostages out. So it's kind of very kind of reminiscent of that. So it's kind of like, all right, cool. I kind of see where they kind of got the idea. And then for me, watching that was kind of nostalgic in a way of, I remember playing something similar to that. So it kind of, you can see where this movie has kind of in popular culture itself. Kind of elevated itself in popular culture, where a lot of the stuff has kind of inspired other artists and other media.
Do you think like so this being considered at that point the last of the franchise when before 4 and 5 was this point here? Do you think like at that time that big spectacle action film, especially in the late 80s, was coming to an end, where You had, well, I'm asking because Rambo 2 was coming out at the height of all that, right? And it was the most successful of the franchise, one of the most successful films, especially during that decade. And then towards the end of that decade, I've noticed that some of Stallone's action films weren't nowhere near as huge moneymakers as you would say, like some of his earlier action films. I mean, I'm wondering like if part of the reason a lot of people were not into didn't go see the film as much is because I don't, not to try to get political here, but one of the things that I think was a controversial too at that time was that at that time Russia was in Afghanistan, and then before the film got released, they ended up leaving Afghanistan, and in the film they're being portrayed as the main villains, but no, now in real life they're no longer the villains, so to speak, because they're no longer trying to invade Afghanistan. As if I'm not sure the whole background, the whole story behind all that there, but I know that was one of the issues that was a concern for the filmmakers because they realized that we've got these guys as the villains, but now they're no longer in this country. It kind of doesn't hold up anymore to serve the purpose of this film here. So I'm wondering if that has anything to do with the
It may have. It also could be like, it was kind of like the last send off for this movie, so you don't know. Did you say it was like a dying down of that genre? No, not at all. Like, you still had other people, up and coming actors, still coming, kind of doing somewhat the same thing. You have Jean-Claude Van Damme. Let's see, who else?
Well, you had Steven Seagal too at that time. Well, I'm just talking about like a big action spectacle because
look at that. You had Predator right around the same time.
Okay, you're right. They came out in '87, but yeah, you're right. Yeah, you're right.
You had First Blood. Then you had Bloodsport. Aliens right around that time, and like the action just kind of like kind of like went up down, like it kind of went steady because after the '90s you just slew. Let's just be honest. There's some good A-list stuff and some fantastic, horribly cheesy B-movie stuff.
Yeah.
You got the Sonny Chiba stuff. You got the American Kickboxer. You have like stuff like that. Like
Jackie Chan too was at the height of his career back in the '80s. He was directing most of his films. Some of his most classic films, Police Story. What else? Legend of the Drunken Master 2. I mean, just a slew of stuff that most Americans were not aware of. But in China, he was huge, and he was making wonderful films that were not as well as acknowledged as they are now, because most people in America were just stuck with this genre of filmmaking here, I would say. So I think you bring up a really good point. I didn't think about that. I should know that by now, but yeah, you bring up a really good point.
If anything, it kind of pushed to kind of like, all right, we're kind of going through this. It kind of pushed to the sci-fi kind of jumped in around that time.
Yeah.
Not to mention you had like what? Batman Returns around that time?
Batman came out in '89.
Yeah, so
it came out in '92, if I'm not mistaken.
It's kind of like that same time frame where like a lot of different production companies were trying different things, and they were like hitting our time frame, they were hitting gold, with these different franchises. So no, I don't think it showed anything slowing down. No, if anything, it was going up.
Well, I think it was just a slump for him then, probably because at that point he was already making other films as well too, like Over the Top,
Up,
and other films, which we'll get into that somewhere down the line. But I think you're right. I think you bring up a really good point there. But I mean, overall though, in terms of like the film itself, like would you? I mean, we only know that we've only seen 3 so far, but out of the 3 that you've seen so far, what was that?
What it was for that time period, for us thinking at that time it was in the last movie, it was a decent send off because it kind of, like I said, it wrapped a nice little bow, somewhat at the end.
Yeah.
Where now with Rambo coming in saving Troutman, and the roles were kind of switched here, and it was kind of cool to see them together, like as they were saying, oh, we did this back in this, we did this. No, like we actually get to see them collaborate with each other, help each other out, and plan this out, and then they kind of see the big climax at the end. Was kind of like the coolest thing as a little kid. Like, what?
Yeah,
he fought a helicopter with a tank? Yeah. Like, that was probably one of the, most memorable parts of that film was that alone. And just seeing him blowing up a helicopter with a tank was just awesome.
I love that you said seeing him blow up the helicopter with a tank. That's like a that should have been the tagline for Rambo 3. You're gonna see Rambo blow up a helicopter, tank. It's, I'm seeing this shit tonight, you know. But anyways, yeah, I agree. I think the film, I don't have that many negatives other than just some slow parts, especially with the kid. I think the kid is really the biggest negative that I personally have, and the villain. The villain was okay for me. It wasn't. They didn't really do much for me as far as the threat is concerned.
This villain had more personality.
Good point.
That's what I like. He had a lot more personality.
Yeah,
I actually was interested in this villain.
Yeah.
The other ones for me kind of felt like throwaways. Like, oh, he's just the bad guy. Like, he wasn't really the bad guy. But like, I didn't really see his motivations. And this one, he actually was like, oh, this dude means business. All right, okay, cool. Like, you know, he's like he was expecting Rambo to come almost. Like,
yeah.
So, yeah, that's kind of how like I of all the villains, I think he was my favorite out of the first three in the trilogy. Moving on. Probably still the most despicable. I don't know. Like I said, the personality-wise was kind of like gravitated to it. So
Yeah, you got some really good points there. Well, I mean, obviously from what you're telling us here, you love the film. I love the film too. I mean, this is like, I don't think
I love the film, but like I said, out of the three, and maybe out of the franchise, it might be the weakest in the entry.
I agree. I agree with you on.
Because the next two come up, like they take everything and they up to 11.
Yeah,
and we'll get to that when we review the next two films because hopefully we should be getting that one out to you soon. We're still trying to wrap up on that one, but before we get into that, what about you? You've been asking me all night. What does Rob the movie guy think about the flick? Like, what were you were telling me your worst moments? You kind of slow it down. You didn't agree with the villain. You didn't like what?
But I do agree with the fact that you did say though he had more personality. That I do agree with, and I'm surprised I didn't really catch on to that. But yes, you're right. He did have a lot more personality, but I didn't really feel the threat of the villain. If anything, that bigger Russian guy, had he been the main the main villain in the film, like if he was the boss, and you can see that massive threat. I would have been like, this guy was awesome, and giving him a little more lines, giving him more to do, and seeing that imposing threat, especially over Troutman, where he's clearly the bigger guy between the two of them, and then you have someone like Rambo, who's obviously in shape but nowhere near as big as this guy, and having them go off at each other, which would have made more payoff.
That was another awesome fun.
Yeah.
That was snap.
Yeah, and then when he dropped him in that little hole in the cave. And then he sets off the bombs or the grenades, and he just like lands and hangs, and just that sequence where you see that explosion and that big wide shot of the cave there, that looked awesome. So I mean, and not that it wasn't any cool, but I think if he had been the main bad guy, like the boss, it would have been even better. But not to say that it wasn't any better now, or that not that it wasn't cool, but for me, that I definitely would have liked the villain more if they stuck with more of that brooding force of nature, rather than having some other Putin-looking type of guy who's barking threats left and right. So I mean, that's just my take on it, though. But I mean, yes, I love the film. I will always go back and watch this film with a lot of joy, despite its flaws. But I definitely, like I said before, I love the approach they took with Rambo in this film, where you see that he is resistant on connecting with other people for reasons that he feels will be a threat to him, because he doesn't want to be surrounding other people with him, because he's always bringing in problems for other people, as you've seen in the franchise. So that aspect of the character I appreciated, and I kind of wish that they kind of delved into that a little bit more, but you got to see little pockets of that throughout the film, which I appreciated. And I mean, I agree, it's not the best of the franchise, but it certainly is one of the, like, it's not a guilty pleasure, but it's such a good film that I can't say that it's that bad. It's actually pretty good. It's just, in comparison,
it's a decent action flick. Yeah. For what it was, it's a decent, fun action flick. It's one of those, like, all right, cool, I'm gonna go back to my quote here. I'm gonna go see a helicopter get blown up by a tank. Like, like it's one of those, like, I'll pop it in. I'll enjoy it. I was like, I was watching the nostalgia goggles here for a second. I was like, huh, like I was really into this movie as a kid. Like I loved the franchise as a kid. And like for me, like the scenes that stuck out for me as the most were like the sneaking in sequence, the sub boss battle, and then like the final battle scene at the end, were the three things that stuck out with me. And then kind of like of course the kid irritated me, but for me as younger, I thought I was like, oh, I could be the kid, I'll help out Rambo. But now like looking back, I'm like, yeah, he kind of slowed down the movie for a bit.
Yeah, I think I can't.
But what you said about Rambo, it kind of solidified that relationship. It kind of solidified what you're talking about. Well, like he, this is his mission. He didn't want to drag anybody else in, and the fact he drug an innocent. Yes, the innocent didn't listen to him, but had Rambo just kept them where he was, it would have never would have happened. So that kind of shows that humanity of Rambo, like actually caring for other people, even though he's always had.
And he didn't even put that on the kid either. If you remember, like when that kid clearly disobeyed his orders, if you will, and he didn't retaliate, and the kid like, oh, why didn't you listen to me? He was actually really calm about it, despite the fact the kid got shot. He got shot because of the kid. Like that side of Rambo, I really appreciate it, because I think had it been another character, maybe like the likes of John McClane, you would probably seen him like cussing his daughter out for stepping in the middle of a shootout. Whereas Rambo is not going to be doing that, even though he has the most reasons to do that. And that's the side of the character that I truly admired, more so in watching this film here too. I have to say, like, there's not a really bad memory that I ever had watching this film. Like, I really love this franchise, and I have nothing but great memories associated with watching this film since I was a little kid. The second one being the first one that I really saw. I mean, it's this is a franchise I'm glad is still going on to this very day. And not a single film, I would have to say, has disappointed me. Certain aspects of it has, but it just I mean, I have nothing but great things to say about the film, apart from what we discussed. But I mean, yeah, man. I mean, I don't know what else I can add to that there. But I mean, you've got your thoughts on the film. Are you looking forward to if the possibility that maybe Stallone, if this was a possibility that's going to continue, would you want to see this character continue on, possibly past part 5, if we were to find out whether or not he lives or not at this point?
I don't know. Like with the final film, is kind of feel like, especially with this recent one coming up, the next one we're about to review. He's kind of more thrown into the situation that he was in the next film. But we're going to get to that. Don't want to ruin, because that's our next video. I don't think I want to answer that just yet. So I think that's something that we should do for
I think you're right, but I just popped in my mind. It's like, I guess the love of the character for me was like,
it was like I kind of want to wait until we see that film until we can get into that, because like if we do, depending on how that film goes, maybe it might open up for a sequel, maybe it might open up for passing the torch type situation. We don't know.
All right.
For this film, I enjoyed it. It has its issues, some pacing, some story, but it's still a fun movie. It's still one of those, and it kind of did, for what edit time part it was, it wrapped up the franchise kind of neatly. Because for the final film, for a last film of a franchise, it's not that bad.
No,
because usually the third films are always the worst ones. Let's be honest.
Yeah. True.
But this was actually a pretty decent ending and a pretty good way to closing out the franchise at that time.
Yeah.
And I give it a cheers.
I give it a cheers as well too. It's one of my most favorite action franchises of all time. I think possibly the top franchise action film that I've ever action series that I've ever come to enjoy. And it's, I mean, can you think of any other action franchises out there right now that are at that height where they have that kind of cinematic impact or pop culture impact or personal impact in your life, like Rambo did?
Terminator.
Well, just the first two, I would say.
You got Terminator. Let's see what other franchises. A little later, but Universal Soldier, but we don't really count the ones after the second one. Let's see. Franchise. Predator. Predator series.
Predator is a mixed bag for me, man. Although 2 I enjoy. I did enjoy 2. Not as much as the first one, but I did enjoy it. The Alien series are another film series that I thought were. I mean, all the first one was kind of considered like a more of a horror, and the second was more action sci-fi. That's kind of a mixed bag for me. But I don't know. John Wick, the Expendable series is another one I can think of, though it doesn't really have that impact.
From that time period, as I don't know, but have that lasting effect on pop culture and that media. Yeah, it has to be like probably. I don't know. I would say Ghostbusters maybe, but
okay, sure, sure. I guess first one is awesome. I mean, we're going off on a tangent here with this here, but all right. Well, those are our thoughts on the film. Let us know if you guys have seen the film. If you have, what did you think? Did you love it? Did you hate it? Is this your favorite of the series? Is it your least favorite of the series here? Let us know and put your thoughts down there in the comment section below. And be sure, since you're on this channel, to subscribe to our channel here. Hit that like button, and also in reference to the subscribe button here, hit that notification button, please, too. Because we always will be posting new videos every single week with reviews of comics, television series, films, of course, and many, many other things pop culture related as well, too. And you can follow myself on Instagram at Rob_Medina0585 and on Twitter at RobMedina0585. And my buddy from Another Nutty, you can follow him on.
You follow me on Twitter and Instagram at Daven is Disaster. And like what Rob said, we have a bunch of stuff coming up. Like I said, we still have 2 more reviews. We're going to be reviewing Rambo, which is the last one since 2009? 8.
Saw that in theaters too. Well, let's get into that in the review.
So we'll get that into the review, and then we're all leading up to. We'll hopefully should have it the same night that we review and watch the film for Rambo 5. So hopefully we'll see that that goes, and we'll have other videos and stuff coming out soon as well. We have other reviews that are coming down the pipeline. So stick here for all your comic, pop culture, news, media, videos, trailers. Here is the spot to go. Check us out. Like I said, hit that like and subscribe button. We'll see you next time.
Oh, and I almost forgot to be sure to follow NRW at social media, the NRW at Twitter and on Instagram, New Release Wednesdays. So until next time, guys. Cheers.
Cheers.